Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be doing a bit of a guide to some popular adult fantasy books. So this is just meant to be like a little video that you can go to if you want to read some more like adult fantasy, and I'm just gonna like go through some different series and give a little like synopsis type thing of each, because I feel like there's like so many books and you might not know where you want to like start or go to next, and just so hopefully this is like helpful guide to some of the more like popular adult fantasy like titles. So yeah, I feel like, was that a good description of the video? I don't know. We're gonna start with some of my favourites because I love the Cosmere, no secret. The first one we have is Mistborn. So the first one is the Final Empire, the second one is the Well of Ascension, and the third one is the Hero of Ages. And this series is like such a popular series. Yeah, I feel like you'll definitely have heard of it, even if you don't really know what it's about. So we're following this world called Scandra, which is quite like a dark world, and ash kind of like falls from the sky, and people have these different powers. So you can kind of ingest metals and get powers from them, and I'll put these down. Each metal that you ingest gives you a different type of power. So then some people can ingest one metal and they get one power from that, and they're called mistings. And some people can ingest the full range of metals and get all the powers, and they're called Mistborn, and they're kind of rarer. So in this one we're following Vin, who's like living on the streets, and she's like an orphan, and she discovers that she's a Mistborn. So she gets recruited by this like gang leader type thing called Kelsier, and he's trying to come up with a plot to like overthrow the Lord Ruler, who's like the big bad guy that rules the world. So yeah, so it's essentially them like trying to take down this Lord Ruler character. So like Vin discovering more about her magic like throughout the book, and it's a really great series, and the kind of it just grows, like you learn so much more about the world and the magic system, and it kind of builds up on each book. And yeah, so I would say this isn't meant to be like a beginner fantasy video, but if you are like new to adult fantasy, that's a really great place to start. So the Mistborn series. So then next, Sanderson's other like most kind of famous series I would say is the Stormlight Archive, which I would say is an adult fantasy staple because it's like my favourite series. So yeah, so ooh, it's all falling over. Yeah, so if you like adult fantasy, then you should definitely read the Stormlight Archive, because yeah. And so this one is set on a world called Rashar, and it's basically this world that's like gets ravaged by storms. Like a storm kind of blows around the world like once every few weeks or something, and so the world's kind of set up like that. And at the start of the book, the king of the Alethi people gets assassinated at the order of these Parshendi people. So, and then essentially it kicks off a war between them. And we're kind of following 5 years after this assassination. And so these two peoples are at war on something called the Shattered Plains, which is like a big plains which have been shattered, so there's like gaps between them. And we're following 3 different characters. So Kaladin, who is a slave at the start of the book, and he gets taken to the Shattered Plains to become one of these bridge crews who like have to run bridges for the soldiers. So they run the bridges and then like lay them down across the chasms, and then the soldiers can like run across, and then the bridge crew like take the bridge to the next chasm. And it's very like downtrodden and very low on hope, and Kaladin's very like depressed at the start of the book, but like watching him grow is just so beautiful. And then you also follow Dalinar, who is a high prince, and he's like in charge of the Alethi people at the High Plains, at the Shattered Plains. I'm getting my words confused. And yeah, and he's having these mysterious visions about like the past, and there were these figures in the past called the Knights Radiant, who are like these mysterious like powerful magical knights who they're like learning more about, because a lot of history's kind of gone missing. And then you also have Shallan, who is kind of a separate storyline, and she is travelling to this other city called Cabranth to try and become the like apprentice to Jas Narcolan, who's like this powerful scholar who's also the sister of the king. And yeah, so that's also really interesting, and Shallan has some very like dicey motivations. So yeah, I love the Stormlight Archive. I feel like it's not a secret on my channel. My channel name is inspired by the Stormlight Archive. So yeah, I would highly recommend that one if you're like looking to get into adult fantasy. Okay, so the next we have the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and this one is like, yeah, another like icon of N.K. Jemisin is just the best. But this is another like huge staple in adult fantasy that I would definitely recommend if you like the genre to read. And the first one is the 5th season, then the second one is the Obelisk Gate, and the third one is the Stone Sky. And yeah, so these are the first N.K. Jemisin books I've read, and these are definitely like her most popular. I wouldn't say they're actually my favourite of her books, but I would say they're definitely like a staple and you should read them because they are really good. So the first one, the 5th season, is about, so it's this world where kind of apocalypses will happen like very often, and they're kind of used to it, but there's these like seasons that come around, and like, so the book kind of opens with like the end of the world and this massive rift opening in the middle of the continent, like essentially like a super volcano, I guess. And we're following Essen, who, her son has just been killed and her daughter has gone missing. So Essen is trying to track down her daughter, kind of it coinciding with the end, this like end of the world, and so she's kind of traveling away from the rift. Essen is something called, is it an origin, and they're people with powers, but they're treated very badly in the world, and I think it's kind of like an allegory to racism, so that's also super interesting. There's definitely some like major kind of like, I don't think political themes is the right word, like social and contemporary themes, is that the word? I don't know, I'm not an English student. But yeah, so that's really interesting. And then we're also following 2 other characters. So Demaya, who's like a young girl who's training to use her Origin powers for the first time. Origini powers for the first time. And then also Spionite, who's like an older character, and she or like a young woman, I guess. And she's kind of in her, like the prime of her power, and she's teaming up with this other guy called Alabaster, who is like her kind of mentor. And they're trying to like investigate something, and they go off to this like island. I can't quite remember, but yeah. So and it's really interesting, and like watching all how their storylines kind of interact with each other is so good. And yeah, and it's just like, it's a kind of book where like you slowly find out more information, and it's like keeps you engaged because you want to know what's happening. And N.K. Jemisin's writing is really like stunning. So yeah, so that's that one. Then next we have the first Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and this is like, I think like seen as the like pinnacle of grimdark fantasy. I mean, I don't really read a lot of grimdark because I don't love grimdark. I tend to like more like wholesome fantasy. But this one is, yeah, so we're following, I can't even remember what happens. So the first one is The Blade Itself, then the second book is Before They Are Hanged, and the third book is The Last Argument of Kings. And we're following kind of a variety of characters, and there's not a huge amount of plot. It's very character focused, this book. And we're following so one of the characters we follow is called Glockter, who's this like inquisitor, and he's kind of, he like tortures people for information basically. But he has this really interesting like inner monologue with himself, because on the outside he's kind of quite disabled, and he's like got, I think he used to be like a big like soldier guy, I can't remember the word, but and then he got injured, and so now he's like this inquisitor. So following him, and then we also follow Logan Ninefingers, who is like this another like soldier guy, who's kind of, yeah, he gets separated from his like people, and then he ends up getting recruited by this like wizard called Baez, who, and they go on like, was that in the second book? I can't even remember. But yeah, so yeah, and then there's this wizard guy called Baez, who I think is, he's a great character. He's like one of the most interesting kind of like wizard type characters in fantasy. Yeah, and then we also follow some other characters. JL, and he's like this kind of quite spoiled like guy who's like a kind of sword fighter, like not a sword fighter, like duelist. And then also Pharaoh, who's like this, she's quite feral. Yeah, so it's quite character focused and like looking at kind of the dark side of humanity. So if you like that kind of thing, then you'll probably like the first Law. So that's a guide to that one. I don't even know what this video is really. Hopefully it's helpful. So then next is not my favourite series ever, but I felt like I had to include it in this video because it is a guide to adult fantasy, so you know, and that is The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear. So these are quite like popular titles. So yeah, the first one is The Name of the Wind, and then the second one is The Wise Man's Fear, and who knows if there will ever be a third one. But so in these ones we're following Kvothe, who is like, he's kind of working in a tavern at the start of the book, and he's like telling his story to this travelling like chronicler, that's it, chronicler. And it's just, we're kind of hearing a story about how Kvothe grew up, and like Kvothe is kind of quite like an almost a legendary figure in the world, but in this one we're just kind of following him like growing up, and he goes to this like magic school type thing, and it's very beautifully written. So if you like lyrical writing, you'll probably like it, maybe. But it is quite slow, it's kind of, it feels quite atmospheric as well, and it's quite like a folklore-y type, telling a story type thing. I didn't love it because I don't like Kvothe, but a lot of people do, and it is very popular, so I wanted to include it here. So if you like the sound of that, then that's that one. And then another big one is The Wheel of Time, which is, the first one is The Eye of the World. I'm not going to go through the whole series because we would be here forever. I haven't read this yet, which is a bit of a running, if you're new to my channel, it's a running joke that I put The Eye of the World on my TBR every month and I never read it. So I don't know in detail what it's about, but from my understanding, it's set in this, it's like a very traditional fantasy world, and there's like this kind of, the wheel of time keeps turning, I think. So like the world kind of goes in cycles, is my understanding, and like, yeah, and there's like maybe a prophecy or something. I might just be making that up. I'll read the synopsis. So as the wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend, legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave birth returns again. What was, what will be, and what is may yet fall under the shadow. So that told us nothing. So I think essentially the world like kind of, yeah, goes in these cycles, and then the kind of shadow, I think, is a mysterious evil figure. I don't know. I'll find out when I finally read it. So yeah, and I think the main character is called Rand. I don't know if that's helpful. Probably not. And he's like a farm boy. So, you know, it's like the kind of classic fantasy, which I feel like this is gonna, I'm gonna enjoy it, I think. But yeah, it's quite chunky. So yeah, okay. But this is not a TBR video. Okay, so the next we have the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic and the Burning God. So I only have the Dragon Republic like physically because the Burning God isn't out yet when I'm filming this, but it will be out when it goes up probably. So yeah, and I'll have it then. And I don't have the Poppy War, I have it on my Kindle. But yeah, so this series is following Rin, who is, she goes to this school, she applies to this school called Synagogue, because she wants to get out of this like arranged marriage. She's kind of a peasant, like living in the country, so she wants to try and like get out of her station. And so she goes to school called Synagogue, and which is like a prestigious military academy. And so the first half of the Poppy War is her kind of like training in Synagogue, and then the second half kind of, it becomes very like war torn. And I would say this is quite very like dark fantasy as well, and it kind of really deals with like the human consequences of war, and kind of how that affects Rin, and how it is very easy for like kind of morals to become torn, and that kind of thing, and like kind of corruption. So yeah, and the kind of like the consequences of war, and it's just, and the kind of military strategy, especially in the Dragon Republic, is, I think, is so well done. And yeah, so it's just really interesting, and also it's kind of based historically as well, on, I think it's the Opium Wars. I might be wrong on that, I should really know that, but yeah, so I think that's really fascinating. And yeah, so it definitely reads very much like fantasy, but it is inspired by historical events, and I think that's really important to like know that context before you read it. So yeah, I really love this series as well, so I would recommend that one. This isn't like a recommendation, it is meant to just be a guide, but I feel like I have to like plug my favourite series also. So yeah, but I feel like this is definitely like a staple of adult fantasy, and if you consider yourself a fan of adult fantasy, you should definitely read these ones. So we have the Farseer books by Robin Hobb. So the first like trilogy is the Assassin's Apprentice trilogy, and then there's also various other ones. I know there's the Live Ships trilogy, which I'm reading at the moment. The first one's called Ship of Magic. First one, Assassin's Apprentice, we're following Fitz, who is kind of, he's older when he's telling the story, but he's kind of looking back on his life, and it's telling the story of him like as a young boy, the first one especially. And he's like a bastard son of the kind of prince, and so he's kind of been raised like out of the way, but then he discovers that he's this like bastard son, so he's kind of brought to the palace, and he's trained by this like assassin type guy. They're not really like assassin like you traditionally think of assassins. He's kind of more of like a, I don't know, I want to say like a political assassin. I don't think that's a real word, but like it's a very like almost like quieter novel. Like there's not big explosive things happening, but it kind of very much like focuses on Fitz. And also Fitz has this like very special relationship with his like dog. So I feel like if you like really bonds between like dogs and humans, I feel like that's really interesting. Yeah, and then the Live Ships trilogy, the first one being Ship of Magic, is also really great. That's following like a big merchant family, just the kind of like turmoil of that. And yeah, these live ships, which are like ships which have kind of sentient minds. So, and they're all part of this like realm of the Eldlings, so they do all fit together. I'm not far enough in the series yet to actually know how they fit together, but yeah. So if you like really kind of character focused stuff, I think you would really enjoy the realm of the Eldlings. And also like quite morally grey characters, and also having characters go through a lot of pain and torture. Well, not literal torture, but like bad things happening to them. Yeah, so that's that one. I wouldn't be able to like include every single book because there's like so many I could include, and like yeah, loads of my favourites as well, which I think is maybe slightly more underrated. I don't want to include in this one because like this is like meant to be like really popular ones, but I do have an underrated fantasy video, and I'll probably do another one, but you know, so yeah. And there's Lord of the Rings, but I feel like I don't know if I'm going to mention that much. I'll just mention it because just to show that I know I exist and know it exists, which I haven't read, but I feel like it's just classic and I do want to read it eventually. But also I feel like I'm not a literary person. I read for fun, like, so I feel like it doesn't really matter that much to me to read it. Like, I don't feel like I need this like fundamental knowledge of the genre to be able to enjoy it, but I feel like I will read it eventually, just because yeah, I don't feel like I have to read it. So yeah, so there is the Lord of the Rings, but I'm sure everyone knows what that's about. I don't even know what it's about, but yeah, so I'm just gonna mention it. Okay, then we have the David Bad series by S.A. Chakraborty. So the first one being City of Brass, then Kingdom of Copper, then Empire of Gold. So I also love this series, and this one we're following, it's very like magical and kind of like political as well. So we're following Nari, who's living in Cairo, and she's kind of almost like a con artist. And then one day she accidentally summons this djinn called, what's he called, Dara. Can't believe I forgot his name then. And he kind of takes her away to this magical city called Davidbad, where in Davidbad there's a lot of like political turmoil between the different djinn tribes. And Nari kind of gets embroiled in that. And then there's also, we're following Ali, who's like the prince, and he of Davidbad, and he is also involved in various political happenings. So he's trying to like become an advocate for the Shafi, who are like half jinn, half human, and they're treated kind of quite badly in the world. So Ali just gets himself into a big mess. And yeah, it's really interesting, and I feel like it's like very political, and the into family politics as well is really interesting. So like Ali's siblings is a really interesting like relationship, and it's just also good. And then like Nari has some family members who like come into the picture, who is very interesting. And yeah, it's just a fantastic series, so I would recommend that. Like kind of like really like magical political settings, it's just so great. So and there's A Song of Ice and Fire, so the like Game of Thrones series, which I've read the first one, I think. I haven't read the rest of them. I'm not even going to attempt to summarise because I feel like people generally know what Game of Thrones is about, like just with the TV show and everything. And I feel like the books, especially the first like few seasons, followed them, or at least when I read the book and watched season 1 of the show, they follow each other like reasonably similarly. So it's just a kind of big world set called Westeros, and we're following different kind of like families, and they're all kind of vying for this Iron Throne. It's a lot of like political backstabbing and that kind of thing, if you like that. I feel like Game of Thrones is quite grimdark as well. And then we have what I would call wholesome grimdark, and that is The Faithful and the Fallen books by John Gwynne. So this one's Malice, and I feel like this is maybe slightly underrated, but I also feel like it's reasonably popular. And yeah, and so this one we're following Corbin, who's like this little wholesome bean, and he's like living in this like little village type thing, just kind of like training to be a warrior. And I can't even really remember what happens in Malice, to be honest. I'm reading Ruin, the third one, right now. I hope you're proud of me, Nicole. And basically magic is like coming back to the world, and there's these like giants which coming, and there's various like political kind of factions or like people, like there's this queen called Rin who's like trying to do her own thing. And yeah, so it's very much like a battle between good and evil, and it feels very like nostalgic classic type fantasy. And there's a lot of kind of sword fighting, and if you like that kind of thing, then I think you really like this. But the characters are also so lovable. Yeah, so that's that one. I feel like this video is deteriorating in quality of my descriptions. Yeah, I'm sorry if I don't include like any series that you think should be included, because I'm sure there's so many that I haven't included. Like, there is a few series which are popular, and I probably should include them if I was being objective, but also I just don't want to mention them. Like Dresden Files and Lightbringer, they're just, I don't like them. I wouldn't recommend them, so I'm not including them on this guide because I don't think they're worth reading. I mentioned the Gentleman Bastard series, so this is by Scott Lynch. So I think there is a little bit of controversy about this author, although I'm not entirely sure. I have to like read up a bit on it a bit more. But I did really enjoy this series when I read it, and so the first one is The Lies of Locke Lamora, then Red Seas Under Red Skies, then The Republic of Thieves. And this series we're following like Locke Lamora and his like little gang of thieves, and they're living in this kind of city, Camor, which is like, it feels very much like Venice. And so they like get involved in these like schemes to try and wheedle money out of people. So, and we're following two kind of timelines. So we're following one timeline where they're like trying to con these people, and then another one of them kind of growing up and like bonding as a group. And this just has such great friendships, and like Locke and Jean, oh, they're so precious. And it's very like kind of gangster fantasy, I would say. Well, not gangster, but like that type of thing, like crime fantasy. I don't know if that's the thing. But yeah, so, and it's very atmospheric, and like, yeah, you can kind of get the sense from the cover, and it's also really like fun in a way. Like, bad things happen, but also it's quite light-hearted because of the characters and their like personalities. So yeah, so that's that series. So I'm gonna leave it there for now because I don't want this video to get like too long. But I might do a part 2, and also if you're interested in like a sci-fi version, then definitely let me know. Although I'm not quite as well read in like sci-fi, so I might not know as many. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you next time.